My name is Demetrius, and I just turned 32 last month. My sister Jessica and I used to be inseparable growing up. She was my best friend, my confidant, the person I trusted most in this world. So when she told me I wasn't invited to her wedding because it was going to be a small, intimate gathering, I was crushed. When I later found out from my mother that it was actually a huge event with over 200 guests, her words still ring in my ears. "It's just a small one," she said dismissively. That was when I decided to book a trip to Iceland instead. What happened next shocked even me. Before I get into this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories about family drama, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more. Growing up, Jessica was always my shadow. 4 years younger than me, she would follow me everywhere, wanting to do everything I did. Our childhood home in suburban Connecticut was the backdrop for countless adventures, from building tree houses to staging our own backyard Olympics. I remember how she would always insist on being on my team, her tiny hand clutching the back of my shirt as we navigated the social minefield of neighborhood gatherings. When Jessica started elementary school, she struggled to fit in. Kids can be cruel, and Jessica, with her thick glasses and slight stutter, became an easy target. I was in 5th grade when she came home crying after some 4th graders had mocked her speech during recess. That day changed something in me. I became fiercely protective, walking her to class whenever I could, giving up lunch periods to check on her, and once even getting detention for confronting a kid who had pulled her hair. By the time I reached high school, Jessica had blossomed into a confident young girl. The stutter disappeared with speech therapy, and she eventually got contact lenses. But our bond remained unbreakable. I taught her how to ride a bike, helped her with homework, and was her sounding board for every school drama and crush. When our parents divorced during my senior year, we leaned on each other even more, creating our own little support system amidst the chaos. College should have separated us, but somehow it brought us even closer. I chose a state university just 30 minutes from home so I could still be there for her. My part-time job at the campus bookstore meant I could help her buy school supplies and occasionally treat her to ice cream on tough days. When she had her first heartbreak at 16, it was my dorm room she fled to, sobbing about some junior named Tyler who had taken another girl to homecoming. After graduating with a degree in visual arts, I struggled to find stable work. Photography had always been my passion, and I slowly built a modest career as a freelance photographer and digital content creator. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me creative freedom. Jessica, meanwhile, sailed through high school with honors and landed a scholarship to an impressive private university in Boston. During her sophomore year of college, Jessica met Marcus. He seemed decent enough at first, from a wealthy Boston family with connections in finance. When she first brought him home for Thanksgiving, we actually got along well, bonding over our shared interest in classic films and hiking. I remember thinking he might be good for her, helping her step out of the comfortable bubble we had created. What I didn't realize then was that meeting Marcus would gradually change Jessica. It started with small things, like her commenting on my apartment being in a not-so-great neighborhood, or suggesting I should invest in better clothes for professional shoots. After spending spring break with his family at their vacation home in the Hamptons, the changes became more noticeable. She began declining my invitations to our traditional Sunday brunches, always with a polite excuse about brunching with Marcus' family or attending some charity event with his mother. Her social media transformed from silly selfies and food pictures to carefully curated images at exclusive restaurants and country clubs. Even her voice changed, adopting the slightly affected tone I associated with the private school kids I'd photographed for graduation portraits. Our parents' reactions to this transformation were telling. My mother, who had remarried a successful real estate developer just 2 years after the divorce, seemed delighted by Jessica's new social circle. My stepfather Gerald had never warmed to me, viewing my artistic pursuits with thinly veiled disdain. He had 2 sons from his previous marriage, both working in finance, and made no secret of wishing Jessica would date guys more like them. When Marcus entered the picture, Gerald became suddenly interested in my sister's life, offering to connect her with his business associates and inviting her to golf outings where I was conspicuously not included. My father, living in a small apartment across town and working as a high school English teacher, watched this transformation with quiet concern. Though he never criticized Jessica outright, I could tell he missed the down-to-earth daughter who used to spend weekends helping him grade papers while I photographed the changing seasons in the park nearby. The year before the wedding, Jessica became increasingly distant. She canceled plans last minute, forgot my birthday until 3 days after, and during family gatherings gravitated toward conversations about summer homes and stock portfolios rather than catching up with me. Still, when she called one evening, voice brimming with excitement to announce that Marcus had proposed during a hot air balloon ride over Napa Valley, I felt genuinely happy for her. Despite the growing distance, she was still my little sister, and I wanted her to be happy. During that call, she bubbled over with details about the 3-carat diamond and how Marcus had arranged for a photographer to capture the moment. She talked about wedding planning and how Marcus' mother already had a wedding planner on retainer. I remember asking when the big day might be, and she said they were thinking about a spring wedding, maybe in about a year. Little did I know that I'd already been excluded from her vision of that perfect day. The first hint that something was off came 3 months after the engagement announcement. I was grabbing coffee with our mutual childhood friend Rachel when she mentioned being excited about Jessica's wedding in June, just 3 months away. "Wait, June?" I asked, confusion evident in my voice. "I thought they were planning for next spring." Rachel's face fell, realizing she'd shared information I apparently wasn't privy to. "Oh, I thought you knew. They decided to move it up." The Baxter Country Club had a cancellation, and Marcus' parents pulled some strings to secure the date. That evening, I texted Jessica, casually asking if she wanted to grab dinner that weekend to catch up. To my surprise, she agreed, suggesting an upscale restaurant downtown that I knew was well beyond my usual budget. Still, I wanted to see her, so I agreed, mentally calculating which bills I could delay paying to afford the meal. The restaurant was every bit as pretentious as I expected, with tiny portions artfully arranged on oversized plates and waiters who looked down their noses at my business casual attire. Jessica arrived 20 minutes late, air kissing my cheek and launching into a story about the traffic and how she and Marcus were considering moving to a suburb with a shorter commute to his financial district office. Finally, after nearly an hour of one-sided conversation about her future-in-law's vacation plans and the challenges of finding the right wedding florist, she casually mentioned, "So, the wedding is actually going to be in June. They've had a cancellation at the club." I tried to keep my expression neutral. "June? That's only 3 months away. You must be scrambling to get everything ready." She waved her hand dismissively. "Marcus' mother has been amazing. She knows everyone, and people are just falling over themselves to accommodate us once they hear the Coleman name. The benefits of marrying into Boston royalty, I guess," she added with a little laugh that didn't sound like her at all. Swallowing my hurt at being kept out of the loop, I offered, "Well, let me know how I can help. I could handle the photography if you want, or help with anything else you need." She knew I had been building a decent portfolio of wedding photography as a side gig to my usual commercial work. Jessica shifted uncomfortably in her seat, twisting the massive engagement ring on her finger. "Actually, about the wedding," she began, not meeting my eyes. "We're keeping it really intimate. The venue is exclusive, and they have strict capacity limits." I felt a cold weight settling in my stomach. "What are you saying, Jess?" "It's just that, well, we're trying to keep the guest list manageable. Marcus' family has so many important connections that need to be included." She took a sip of her sparkling water, still avoiding my gaze. "Are you saying I'm not invited to your wedding?" I asked directly, my voice low. She finally looked at me, her expression a mix of guilt and something else, something that looked uncomfortably like embarrassment. "It's not personal, Demetrius. It's an intimate affair, just immediate family and very close friends." Not immediate family?" "I'm your brother," I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "Of course you are," she rushed to say. "But the Colemans are very traditional, and they have a certain way of doing things. The wedding party is already set, and the guest list was finalized weeks ago." That evening ended awkwardly, with Jessica making vague promises about getting together soon, and me sitting in my car for nearly an hour afterward, trying to process the fact that my sister didn't want me at her wedding. The next day, I called my mother, hoping for some explanation or support. "Mom, did you know Jessica isn't inviting me to her wedding?" I asked, after exchanging brief pleasantries. There was a pause on the line. "Yes, she mentioned there were some constraints with the venue. And you're okay with that? Your son not being at your daughter's wedding?" She sighed, that familiar sound of impatience I had come to know well. "It's just a small one, Demetrius," she said dismissively. "Jessica has to consider Marcus' family too, and they have certain expectations. Sometimes we have to make compromises in life." But that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few weeks, I began seeing social media posts from extended family members expressing excitement about attending Jessica's big day. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, my mother's college roommate, even my high school English teacher all appeared to have made the cut. The final straw came when I saw a post from my stepsister Brianna, whom Jessica had never been particularly close with. She was sharing pictures of the expensive dress shed bought especially for my sister's wedding. Beneath the photo was a comment from Jessica herself. "Can't wait to see you there. It's going to be such a special day." I confronted Jessica the next time I saw her, at a family dinner at our mother's house. Gerald was holding court at the head of the table, talking about his recent golf trip with Marcus' father, while my mother nodded along enthusiastically. I waited until after dessert, catching Jessica alone in the kitchen as she helped clear plates. "So I saw Brianna got an invitation," I said quietly, keeping my voice level. Jessica froze, then continued rinsing a plate with deliberate focus. "It's complicated, Demetrius." "Then uncomplicate it for me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like everyone but me is invited to this so-called intimate wedding." She put down the plate and turned to face me, her expression hardening. "Fine. You want the truth? Marcus' parents think you're not." She paused, searching for the right word, refined enough for their country club wedding. "They were concerned about how it would look to their friends, having someone like you there." "Someone like me?" I echoed, stunned by her candor. "Someone who doesn't fit their world. I told them about your photography, but they Googled you and saw those documentary photos you took of the homeless encampment downtown." She lowered her voice. "They found it distasteful, and they worried you'd stand out, that you'd make people uncomfortable." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And you? What do you think?" She looked away. "I just want my wedding day to be perfect. No drama, no awkwardness. Marcus' family is important to me, and I need to respect their wishes." When I asked my parents to stand up for me, to insist that their son should be at their daughter's wedding, they both declined in their own ways. My mother cited family harmony and the importance of Jessica's future connections. My father, though clearly uncomfortable with the situation, simply said it wasn't his place to interfere with Jessica's decisions. I made one last attempt to reach a compromise, suggesting I could attend just the ceremony, or perhaps help behind the scenes with photography or anything else needed. Jessica finally delivered the killing blow during a tense phone call. "Maybe you could just send a gift," she said. "That would be the most helpful thing you could do for me right now." After that final rejection, I fell into a dark place. For 2 weeks, I barely left my apartment, calling in sick to the few scheduled photo shoots I had, ignoring calls from friends, and subsisting mainly on delivery, pizza, and cereal. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, reopening childhood wounds of always feeling like the family outsider. One night, unable to sleep and mindlessly scrolling through my phone, an advertisement appeared for discounted flights to Iceland. The stark, otherworldly landscapes in the photos caught my attention immediately. Vast ice fields, towering waterfalls, black sand beaches, all of it as far from Boston society as one could possibly get. A wild idea began to form in my mind. The wedding was scheduled for June 15th. What if, instead of sitting home alone nursing my hurt feelings, I was thousands of miles away, surrounded by some of the most beautiful scenery on Earth? The more I thought about it, the more appealing it became, not just as an escape but as a statement. While my family celebrated without me, I would be creating my own memories, taking photos that meant something to me. The next morning, I began researching in earnest. Iceland in June meant nearly 24 hours of daylight, perfect for photography. The northern lights would be minimal that time of year, but the midnight sun would create extraordinary lighting opportunities. I discovered that with my modest savings and a credit card I rarely used, I could afford a 10-day trip including a small guesthouse rental in Reykjavik and a compact rental car to explore the island. My plan took shape with methodical precision. I would leave 3 days before the wedding, giving me time to settle in and scope out photography locations. I would stay for a week after, long enough to explore the major landmarks and hopefully process my feelings about the family situation. My cousin Alex, the only family member who had reached out to check on me after learning I was excluded from the wedding, thought I was making a mistake. "You're really going to skip town instead of trying to work this out?" he asked during a rare phone call. I actually answered, "Jess is being influenced by Marcus' family, but she's still your sister. Maybe if you talk to her again." I cut him off. "I've tried talking. I've tried compromising. I've tried understanding her position. At some point, I have to accept that she made her choice, and now I'm making mine." I didn't immediately announce my travel plans to anyone. Instead, I began posting vague social media updates about taking some time for myself, exploring new horizons, and seeking inspiration for my photography. I tagged these posts with general travel hashtags, but gave no specifics about timing or destination. The reactions were exactly as I expected. My mother sent a text asking if everything was all right. Jessica, who had barely communicated with me since our last confrontation, suddenly became concerned, messaging to ask about my cryptic posts. Friends expressed support for whatever journey I was undertaking, assuming it was some sort of artistic retreat. A week before my planned departure, I finally posted a simple announcement. "Taking off for Iceland on Tuesday. Solo adventure to feed my soul and my camera. See you all in a couple of weeks." I deliberately avoided mentioning that my trip coincided exactly with the wedding. The family response was immediate and predictable. My mother called within minutes. "Iceland? Now?" she demanded. "You know your sister's wedding is next weekend." "Is it?" I replied coolly. "I must have forgotten, since I wasn't invited." "Demetrius, this is childish. You're doing this to make a point, and it's going to hurt your sister." "I'm doing this because I need some time away, and because Iceland has always been on my photography bucket list," I said, which wasn't entirely untrue. The fact that it coincides with an event I'm explicitly not welcome at is just convenient timing. Jessica texted later that evening, "I know you're upset, but running away to Iceland isn't going to solve anything. We should talk before you go." I didn't respond. My father was the only one who seemed to understand, or at least respect my decision. When he called, he simply asked practical questions about my itinerary, whether I'd arranged for someone to water my plants, and if I'd purchased travel insurance. Before ending the call, he said quietly, "Take lots of pictures. I'd love to see Iceland through your eyes." The 2 days before my departure were filled with increasing drama. Jessica called multiple times, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry accusations of sabotage to tearful pleas for understanding. My mother enlisted Gerald to call and give me a lecture about family responsibility and maturity, which I let go to voicemail after recognizing his number. Even Marcus sent a text suggesting we meet for a beer to clear the air, an overture that came far too late to seem genuine. Through it all, I focused on my preparations. I cleaned my camera lenses, packed appropriate layers for Iceland's unpredictable weather, arranged for remote access to my work files so I could still edit photos while traveling, and made sure my apartment was secure for my absence. On June 12th, 3 days before the wedding, I boarded a plane at Logan International Airport, turned off my phone, and felt the weight of family expectation lift from my shoulders as we took off into the clear blue sky. The first sight of Iceland from the air was breathtaking. Vast expanses of black volcanic soil contrasted with vibrant green moss, glacier tongues extending from massive ice fields, and steam rising from geothermal areas. As the plane descended toward Keflavik International Airport, I felt a surge of liberation. For the first time in months, I was completely beyond the reach of family drama and expectations. The small guest house I had booked in Reykjavik was perfect. A cozy attic room in a historic home with slanted ceilings, and a small desk positioned perfectly beneath a skylight. The elderly couple who owned the place, Magnus and Helga, spoke excellent English and seemed delighted to have a photographer staying with them, offering suggestions for lesser-known spots that would make for unique images. That first day, I wandered the colorful streets of Reykjavik, capturing the vibrant painted houses, the imposing Hallgrímskirkja church with its distinctive architecture, and the reflections of buildings in the harbor waters. In a small cafe, I struck up a conversation with a group of travelers from Australia who invited me to join them for dinner. The easy camaraderie of strangers with no preconceptions or expectations felt like a balm to my wounded spirit. By the second day, it established a comfortable routine: mornings for exploring the city, afternoons for driving to nearby natural attractions, evenings for reviewing and editing my growing collection of photographs. The guesthouse had excellent internet, allowing me to upload selected images to my portfolio website and even complete a few outstanding client projects remotely. On the morning of June 15th, wedding day, I woke early to the soft light of the midnight sun filtering through my skylight. For a moment, I lay still, acknowledging the complex emotions swirling within me. Somewhere across the ocean, my sister was preparing for her big day, surrounded by family and friends, her brother conspicuously absent. I allowed myself a brief pang of sadness before turning my attention to the day ahead. I'd planned an ambitious itinerary, driving part of the Golden Circle to photograph Thingvellir National Park, Gullfoss Waterfall, and the Geysir geothermal area. When I finally turned on my phone to check navigation, the barrage of notifications was overwhelming. 15 missed calls, 37 text messages, and countless social media alerts. Curious despite myself, I began scrolling through them. The first message, from my cousin Alex, set the tone. "Dude, total disaster at the country club. Pipe burst in the main hall last night. Whole place is flooded. Everyone freaking out." Following messages painted a picture of increasing chaos. The prestigious Baxter Country Club, centerpiece of Jessica's dream wedding, had experienced a catastrophic plumbing failure the night before the ceremony. The grand ballroom, where the reception was to be held, had several inches of water damage, and emergency remediation crews had deemed it unusable for at least a week. My mother had texted repeatedly, her messages growing more frantic. 7:15 a.m. Wedding venue flooded. Total disaster. Jessica hysterical. 7:42 a.m. They're trying to find alternative location. Nothing comparable available. 8:27 a.m. Where are you? Jessica asking for you. Says you would know how to fix this. 9:05 a.m. Please call as soon as you get this. Family emergency. Even my normally stoic father had sent multiple messages. 8:30 a.m. Venue disaster. Jessica could use her brother right now. 9:15 a.m. I know you're hurt, son, but if you could find a way to be here, it would mean a lot. I set the phone down and walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful Reykjavik morning. A part of me felt vindicated, a petty satisfaction that the perfect high society wedding was imploding. But another part ached at the thought of Jessica, in distress, on what should have been her happiest day. After a moment's contemplation, I turned back to my carefully planned itinerary. Today was about Thingvellir, Gullfoss, and Geysir. Whatever was happening in Boston would unfold with or without me. I had been explicitly uninvited. I wasn't about to rush to the rescue now. Throughout the day, as I stood before thundering waterfalls and watched the reliable eruptions of Strokur Geyser, my phone continued to buzz with updates. I checked periodically, piecing together the unfolding drama from texts and social media posts. The wedding had been hastily relocated to the cramped community room of Marcus Parents Church, a significant downgrade from the elegant country club. The carefully planned floral arrangements, designed specifically for the club's grand staircase and ballroom, looked out of place and excessive in the smaller venue. The gourmet menu had been scrapped for a hastily catered affair that apparently left much to be desired. By mid-afternoon Boston time, I received perhaps the most surprising message, directly from Jessica. Our photographer canceled last minute because of the venue change, said the lighting in the church hall won't work with his style. I'm desperate. I know you're in Iceland, and I'm sorry for everything, but is there any way you could video call in and give the replacement photographer some guidance? Please, Demetrius, I need my brother. I stared at the message for a long time, standing at the edge of a cliff overlooking the magnificent Gullfoss waterfall, the roar of water drowning out everything but my thoughts. The irony was almost too perfect. Now that disaster had struck, Suddenly I was needed. My previously embarrassing photography skills now in demand. My mother's final text came as I was watching the sunset paint the landscape in hues of gold and pink. "Your sister needs you. Please answer." I took a deep breath and powered off my phone. Raising my camera instead, I captured the otherworldly beauty of the Icelandic evening, the sun hanging low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the ancient landscape. Later that night, I witnessed the subtle magic of the midnight sun, not true darkness, but a twilight that lasted for hours, perfect for capturing long exposure shots of the landscape. Standing there in the ethereal half-light, thousands of miles from the family that had deemed me unsuitable for their perfect day, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but also a profound sadness for what had been lost. Not just a wedding day, but the close relationship with my sister that had once been the cornerstone of my life. My return to Boston a week later was met with the predicted storm. I had barely set my bags down in my apartment when the aggressive knocking started at my door. Through the peephole, I could see my mother's familiar scowl. "I know you're in there, Demetrius," she called through the door. "Your lights are on." Sighing, I opened the door, steeling myself for the confrontation. She swept in without waiting for an invitation, her designer purse swinging wildly as she gestured. "How could you?" she demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. "Your sister needed you, and you were off taking vacation photos while her wedding day fell apart." I remained calm, setting my camera bag down carefully. "I'm sorry the venue had problems, but I fail to see how that has anything to do with me. I wasn't invited, remember? It was just a small one, right?" She flinched at having her own dismissive words thrown back at her. "This isn't the time for petty grudges, Demetrius. Family rises above." "That's rich," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Where was this family-first attitude when Jessica and the Colemans decided I wasn't refined enough for their country club wedding? Where was it when you and Gerald supported excluding your own son? My mother's face flushed. "You're not being fair." "There were considerations, social climbing considerations," I interrupted. "Let's be honest for once. Jessica was embarrassed by me, by my career, by the fact that I don't fit into her new upper-crust world. And instead of standing up for me, you enabled it." The argument continued for nearly an hour, circling around the same points without resolution. My mother insisted I had been selfish and immature, deliberately sabotaging Jessica's big day by my absence. I maintained that I had simply respected the family's wishes by removing myself entirely from the equation. We parted with nothing resolved, my mother leaving with a parting shot about how disappointed my father was in my behavior. The meeting with Jessica came 3 days later. She had requested we meet at a quiet cafe near my apartment, a place we'd frequented in the past, which I took as a small olive branch. She looked tired. The perfect makeup and polished appearance I'd grown accustomed to somewhat diminished. "You look tan," was her opening remark, as she slid into the seat across from me. "Iceland must have had good weather." 24-hour sunlight will do that," I replied, noting how we were both carefully circling the real issues. After ordering coffees, she finally addressed the elephant in the room. "You know everyone thinks you planned this whole Iceland trip as revenge, right? That somehow you knew the venue would have problems and deliberately made yourself unavailable when I would need you most." I almost laughed at the absurdity. That's quite a superpower they're attributing to me. Clairvoyance and the ability to burst pipes from 4,000 miles away. She didn't smile. "It was humiliating, Demetrius. The most important day of my life, ruined, and my own brother wasn't there to support me. I wasn't invited," I reminded her quietly. "You made it very clear that I wasn't welcome, that I wasn't good enough for your perfect day." She had the grace to look somewhat ashamed. "I know, and that was wrong. But when everything started falling apart, you were the person I wanted to call. You always fixed things for me." "Only when it's convenient," I said, the hurt still raw. "I'm good enough to call in an emergency, but not good enough to celebrate with you." The conversation deteriorated from there, Jessica alternating between acknowledging her mistake in excluding me and accusing me of deliberately making things worse by being unreachable during the crisis. We parted on strained terms, with a vague agreement to give each other space. In the following weeks, I discovered that the wedding debacle had created ripples throughout our social circle. Some family members, particularly on my father's side, secretly expressed support for my decision to travel rather than wait around for a last-minute invitation. Others, especially those closer to my mother and stepfather, viewed me as the villain who abandoned his sister in her time of need. An awkward encounter at the grocery store brought me face-to-face with Marcus for the first time since the wedding. He was noticeably less friendly than in previous meetings, his customary charm replaced with cold civility. "Jessica tells me you've been blaming her for your exclusion from the wedding," he said after minimal pleasantries. "I think you should know that was a mutual decision. We felt your presence might create tension with some of our guests." I nodded slowly. "Thanks for the clarification. It's always good to know exactly where I stand." He had the audacity to look offended. "No need for sarcasm. Weddings are complicated. I'm sure you'll understand someday, if you ever settle down." I would have left it there, but something in his condescending tone pushed me past my limit. "Just out of curiosity," I asked, keeping my voice level, "if the venue hadn't flooded and Jessica hadn't desperately needed a photographer, would you ever have reconsidered your mutual decision to exclude me?" His uncomfortable silence was answer enough. The social consequences of the wedding drama extended beyond family. I found myself uninvited from several gatherings hosted by mutual friends who had chosen sides in the dispute. Some longtime acquaintances became awkwardly formal in their interactions with me, clearly uncertain about where loyalties should lie. Meanwhile, I began hearing rumors about trouble in paradise for the newlyweds. According to my cousin Alex, who remained neutral in the family divide, Jessica and Marcus had cut their honeymoon short after a series of arguments. Jessica had returned to work earlier than planned, while Marcus had been seen having tense lunches with his parents, presumably discussing the financial losses from the wedding disaster. About 2 months after the wedding, my father invited me to dinner at his modest apartment. Unlike others in the family, he had never explicitly criticized my Iceland decision, though I knew he was disappointed by the growing rift between his children. Over a simple meal of spaghetti and garlic bread, he finally addressed the situation. "I was angry at first," he admitted, setting down his fork. "Not because you went to Iceland, but because I wished you'd been bigger than the slight. I wanted you to show up anyway, to be there for your sister despite everything." I considered this. "Maybe you're right," I said. "But at what point do I stop accepting being the family afterthought? When do I get to prioritize my own feelings?" He nodded slowly. "Fair question. I don't have a good answer, except to say that families are complicated, and sometimes we have to choose between being right and being together." The most surprising development came 3 months after the wedding. Jessica called one evening, asking if she could come over. When she arrived, her eyes were red from crying, her normally perfect appearance disheveled. As soon as I closed the apartment door, she broke down completely. "I made a terrible mistake," she sobbed, accepting the tissue I offered. "Not just with the wedding, with everything. I let Marcus' family change me, make me think their approval was more important than the people who actually loved me all along." Through her tears, she revealed that her marriage was already showing serious strain. Marcus blamed her for the wedding disaster, suggesting that if she'd been better connected or more organized, they could have secured a comparable backup venue. His parents had made it clear that the embarrassment of the downgraded celebration had affected their social standing, something they would not easily forgive. "I made one of the hardest decisions of my life," she confessed. "I rejected my own brother to please people who only valued me as an accessory to their perfect family image. And the worst part is, I knew it was wrong when I was doing it. I just convinced myself it was necessary for my future." I sat beside her on the couch, not quite ready to offer comfort but no longer wanting to deepen her pain. "That's a tough realization," I said quietly. She looked at me, vulnerability replacing the polished facade I'd grown accustomed to seeing. "I miss my big brother," she whispered, "the one who always had my back, no matter what. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope someday you can." In the months that followed, I poured myself into my work, using photography not just as a career but as therapy. The Iceland photos had turned out better than I could have hoped, capturing both the stark beauty of the landscape and something of my own emotional journey in the process. I created a special portfolio titled Solitude and Ice that began attracting attention from galleries and photography websites. My social circle underwent a transformation as well. No longer feeling obligated to maintain connections with my sister's elite world, I found myself gravitating toward other artists and creators. I joined a local photography collective that hosted monthly critique sessions, where I met people who valued creativity and authentic expression over social status. One of these new connections was Ariana, a travel photographer who had spent years documenting remote communities around the world. Unlike the polite interest or veiled condescension I'd often encountered when discussing my work with my sister's social circle, Ariana asked thoughtful questions and offered insightful feedback. We began meeting for coffee before the monthly collective meetings, our conversations ranging from technical aspects of photography to deeper discussions about the ethical responsibilities of documentary photographers. It was during one of these conversations that I gained a new perspective on the family situation. "Families are like photographs," Ariana said one afternoon as we reviewed prints at a local coffee shop. "What matters isn't just what's in the frame, but also what you choose to leave out. Sometimes the negative space tells the real story." Her comment made me reconsider the narrative I'd constructed around the wedding exclusion. While the hurt was real and justified, I had perhaps framed the story too simplistically, casting myself as the victim and my family as villains. The reality, as always, contained more nuance. Meanwhile, my professional life took an unexpected turn when my Iceland portfolio went viral after being featured on a major photography website. Suddenly, I was receiving inquiries about prints, exhibition opportunities, and commissioned travel shoots. The irony wasn't lost on me that the trip taken in response to rejection had become the catalyst for new professional success. As for family relationships, healing came in small, often awkward increments. Jessica made consistent efforts to reconnect, first through text messages, then through invitations to casual lunches, where we carefully avoided mention of Marcus or the wedding. I learned she was in therapy, working through her own issues around identity and external validation. During one of these lunches, about 6 months after the wedding, she made a confession that surprised me. "I showed Marcus the photos from your Iceland trip," she said, stirring her iced tea nervously. "They're really incredible, Demetrius. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was impressed." I nodded, accepting the compliment without comment. "It made me realize something," she continued. "All this time, his family looked down on your career, acted like you were struggling or unsuccessful compared to their financial world. But you create beauty that moves people." "What do they create? Spreadsheets? Investment portfolios?" I smiled slightly. "Different values, different measures of success." One of the most difficult reconciliation attempts came from my mother, who invited me to brunch at her and Gerald's home. I was surprised to discover upon arrival that Gerald was absent, apparently on a golf trip with business associates. Over mimosas and quiche, she approached the subject with uncharacteristic humility. "I've been thinking about patterns," she said, refilling her glass. "After your father and I divorced, I was determined that my children would have better opportunities than I had. When I met Gerald, I saw those opportunities within reach." I listened silently, waiting for her to continue. But somewhere along the way, I started confusing opportunity with acceptance. I wanted the country club crowd to embrace us so badly that I began measuring everything against their standards. "Including you," she admitted, meeting my eyes directly. "I failed you as a mother when I didn't stand up for your inclusion in the wedding. I put social climbing above my own son. While I wasn't ready to fully forgive, I appreciated her honesty." "It means a lot to hear you say that," I told her. "I need time, but this is a start." Jessica's marriage continued to show strain, with Marcus increasingly absent for business trips and social obligations that somehow didn't include his wife. About 8 months after the wedding, she revealed to me over coffee that his parents had made their conditional acceptance painfully clear. "They actually had the nerve to tell me that my stock has fallen since the wedding disaster," she said, attempting a laugh that didn't quite succeed. "Apparently, my primary value was as a hostess for perfect social gatherings, and I failed the audition." "What will you do?" I asked, concerned by the hollow look in her eyes. She shrugged. "I'm not sure yet, but I'm starting to understand that I traded authentic relationships for artificial acceptance. Not a great bargain." My own journey of growth continued through unexpected channels. Inspired by Ariana, I signed up for a 2-week photography workshop in New Mexico, focusing on portrait work with indigenous communities. The experience pushed me far outside my comfort zone, requiring me to connect deeply with subjects before photographing them, to understand their stories rather than simply capturing their images. I also began attending therapy sessions, working through not just the wedding exclusion, but deeper patterns of feeling like an outsider in my own family. My therapist helped me recognize that while the hurt was legitimate, holding on to anger was preventing my own growth. The most healing experience came unexpectedly through my work. A small gallery in Cambridge accepted my Iceland portfolio for an exhibition, and I sent invitations to everyone in my family, not expecting much response. To my surprise, they all attended the opening night, my father arriving first with a supportive smile, Jessica coming alone and spending a long time in front of each photograph, and even my mother and Gerald making a brief but significant appearance. As Jessica stood before a particularly evocative image of a solitary figure on a black sand beach, she whispered, "I was wrong to exclude you from my wedding. But if you've been invited, you might never have created this. I'm proud of you, big brother." Though reconciliation was complex and incomplete, each conversation and shared moment rebuilt something of what had been broken. A year after the wedding fiasco, when Jessica quietly announced that she and Marcus were separating, I was the first person she called, and when she asked if I would help her move out of their luxury condo into a smaller place of her own, I didn't hesitate. 1 year and 2 months after the wedding that I wasn't invited to, our family gathered for the first time in my father's backyard. It wasn't a holiday or special occasion, just a deliberate attempt to reconnect as a family. My father grilled burgers. Jessica brought a homemade pasta salad rather than the catered appetizers she would have chosen a year earlier, and my mother arrived without Gerald, saying simply that this was about our core family today. As the afternoon sun filtered through the maple trees, casting dappled shadows across the worn picnic table, Jessica raised her glass of lemonade. "To new beginnings," she said, looking directly at me, "and to hard-earned wisdom." The divorce from Marcus had been finalized just 2 weeks earlier, a surprisingly amicable end to a marriage that had lasted barely a year. She had moved into a cozy apartment in a more bohemian part of town, taken a pay cut to work for a non-profit she believed in, and started showing up as the sister I remembered from before the Coleman influence. After dinner, as we helped our father clean up, Jessica proposed something unexpected. "Demetrius, I was hoping you might consider taking me to Iceland," she said. "I feel like I need to see this place that changed so much for you, for us." 2 months later, we found ourselves standing at the edge of the same black sand beach I'd photographed during my solo journey. The weather was harsher now, the late fall winds whipping across the landscape, but the stark beauty remained unchanged. "This is where I finally let go," I told her, raising my voice above the wind. "Not just of the wedding stuff, but of needing anyone's approval." She nodded, tears mixing with the light rain on her cheeks. "I'm still learning how to do that. It's harder than it looks." That trip became our reset button. Removed from Boston and its social pressures, sharing tiny rental car and budget accommodations, we rediscovered the easy rapport that had defined our childhood. One night, huddled in a small cafe as a storm raged outside, Jessica articulated what had changed. "You know what I realized?" she said, warming her hands around a mug of hot chocolate. "The people who truly love you never make you choose between belonging and being yourself. Marcus' family offered conditional acceptance, but you always gave me the real thing, even when I failed to return it." Upon our return to Boston, the shift in family dynamics became permanent rather than temporary. My mother, seeing the renewed connection between her children, made consistent efforts to rebuild her relationship with me, including occasionally uncomfortable but necessary conversations about her priorities and choices after the divorce. Gerald, perhaps sensing the changing tide, made awkward attempts to connect with me, inviting me to social events I would have been excluded from before. While I maintained polite boundaries with him, I no longer felt the sting of his judgment. His opinion, once so important in our family ecosystem, had been rightfully downgraded. My photography business continued to flourish, with the Iceland portfolio opening doors to travel assignments and exhibition opportunities I had only dreamed of previously. I developed a specialty in capturing remote landscapes and the human relationship with extreme environments, work that took me from the deserts of Namibia to the mountains of Patagonia. Between assignments, I built a life that balanced my nomadic professional tendencies with deeper local connections. The photography collective became a cornerstone of my social life, and my friendship with Ariana evolved into something more meaningful, a relationship built on mutual respect and shared passion rather than social convenience. One evening, as we edited photos together in my apartment, she asked about the framed image I kept on my desk, the solitary figure on the black beach, silhouetted against the midnight Sunday. "This one feels different from your other work," she observed. "More personal." I nodded. "That's me, actually." Self-timer. It was the day of my sister's wedding, when everything was falling apart back home. She studied the image more carefully. "It doesn't look like someone running away. It looks like someone finding themselves." Her observation captured precisely what I'd gained through the painful experience of exclusion and its aftermath. By removing myself from a situation where I wasn't valued, I'd created space to discover my own worth, independent of family validation or social status. Jessica found her way forward too. After the divorce, she returned to graduate school, pursuing a degree in education that Shed once dismissed as impractical. She dated occasionally, but focused primarily on rebuilding her sense of self and her authentic relationships. The superficial friends from her Coleman days drifted away, replaced by people who appreciated her genuine warmth and humor. On the anniversary of my Iceland departure, I received a package from her, a framed print of a photograph Shed taken during our trip together, showing me at work photographing a waterfall. With it was a note that simply read, "Thank you for showing me how to stand in my truth, even when it's lonely. I would rather have authenticity with you than acceptance without you." The lessons I've carried forward from that painful period continue to shape my choices. I learned that true belonging never requires diminishing yourself to fit in. I discovered that sometimes removing yourself from toxic situations isn't running away, it's creating space for something better to grow. Most importantly, I realized that self-respect must precede forgiveness, not as a punishment for others, but as protection for yourself. Family relationships remain complex, as they do for everyone. There are still awkward moments, old patterns that occasionally resurface, and new boundaries to negotiate. But beneath it all runs a current of authenticity that was missing before, an understanding that love without respect isn't really love at all. As I travel the world capturing images of remote beauty, I often think about that moment of decision when the wedding invitation never came and I chose Iceland instead. It wasn't spite that drove me across the ocean, though hurt certainly played a part. It was an act of self-preservation, a refusal to accept the narrative that I somehow deserved exclusion from a milestone family event. The irony isn't lost on me that by missing that wedding, I found a path to something far more valuable than momentary inclusion. By choosing myself when no one else would, I created space for relationships built on mutual respect rather than social obligation. If you've ever faced exclusion from people who should have valued you, I hope this story offers some comfort. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead to the most necessary redirections. The question isn't whether everyone accepts you, it's whether you can stand firmly in your own worth, even when others fail to see it. Have you ever had to choose between dignity and belonging? How did you handle family rejection or exclusion? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more authentic conversations about family dynamics and self-discovery. And remember, the people who truly belong in your life will never make you feel like you don't belong in theirs. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to honor your worth, even when it's difficult.